Welcome to the first episode of Viestamol Renaissance, recaps from reality TV warriors. My name is Michael Holmstone, and joining me as always is the Canadian who has only ever written letters to one mole candidate, but we can't talk about him yet, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and it is a renaissance of our podcast, even though we've only actually technically been away, 11 days? 13 days it is between mole recaps and a week since your Shane and Andrew interview.
Yeah, and with the Amazing Race 32 coming up, and more and doing more Belgian mole historian podcasts that we're working on at the moment. Spoilers. I don't think it's a spoiler after we did the Argentina one and we already released saying we're going to do South Africa too. So
I haven't put a time frame on it deliberately just in case. That will hopefully be announced at the end of the season.
So it is like a little renaissance for us right now because we'll probably be doing lots of recordings for the next month and a half, roughly.
Yeah, this is the first actual live episode we've had to talk about since the end of Belgian Mole.
So that would put it at over 4 months.
It's roughly 4 months-ish. It was the first week of May that we finished Belgian Mole Greece, and we're now here for our renaissance with another coronavirus hit country in Italy.
Well, they were hit really, really hard right after the last Vidum season aired. Right after China, I think right towards the end of China's airing is when Italy got hit really hard. That would have been back in March.
Yeah, it was a fun joke for me to make going, yeah, next year they're actually going to go to South Korea and join a cult. Because they have somehow managed to go to the two countries that were worst hit at the start of the coronavirus.
Yeah, China and then Italy.
Can't wait for the American season next year.
Florida's coming.
Yeah, it's Vidum Florida next year, and then the year after is going to be Vidum Brazil. And then just for funsies, they're going to go to Australia and New Zealand together and make sure they have coronavirus too.
It's going to be interesting. I know we're jumping ahead a full season already, but it's going to be interesting how eager they're going to be to make sure they have one season a year, to make sure they can have another season possibly by February or March, because, I mean, they could do it. They could do a domestic season or a season within the Schengen zone if they really wanted to.
They have already said they're going to try and film one as soon as possible. However, as I said to you earlier, I don't think we're going to get another Vidum season until March at the absolute earliest. I suspect that they will use September again next year, though. I think they'll film early next year and go to the Southern Hemisphere somewhere and release it in September. That's my gut feeling on it.
If your gut feeling proves to be true, I think Brazil would actually be the next location then, because they have the least amount of restrictions of any South American country.
Yeah, I'd be very, very surprised if we finish this in October and then immediately go into Vidum in January.
I guess we'll see. I guess there's a lot of uncertainty in the reality TV industry right now. Amazing Race could be permanently canceled, potentially. No one really knows.
Reserving judgment until after Amazing Race 32, but fingers crossed.
It could be, or just another. Well, most likely the case is it's just going to be another really long break for the Amazing Race after both their Israeli version and the American version have already been on really long breaks.
Yeah, and weirdly, we're recording this on Sunday. The Israeli version actually came back tonight.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, today was the premiere date for a season that filmed 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2018, December it filmed, because it was pretty much the same time that that Amazing Race 32 was in the Philippines, I believe.
Yeah, and then 32 is airing starting next month so far. So it's crazy that the only 2 seasons that were in the can were from 2 years ago. So it's a very odd time for these reality shows. There's no set schedules that are quite lining up to either A, for when they're filming it, or B, when they broadcast it on TV.
And talking of complete uncertainty, we didn't get this cast confirmed until before the actual premiere, which meant that we couldn't do for once our cast preview, because I really wanted to do a cast preview on this season.
We didn't get it till like 3 days ago?
We didn't get it until it aired last night, and there were somewhere between about 30 and 40 names rumoured going all the way back. There was a rumor of someone from season 1 coming back, which obviously didn't happen.
It's funny because the filming schedule was really short for this season, right? I'm gonna guess probably not even 2 weeks.
I'm not sure because it's 2 episodes less than normal, and it filmed October, November last year. It was middle of October to early November, I think. So it's sort of 2.5-ish weeks, between 2.5 weeks, I think.
Because what's the standard for? I know they do pre-production stuff with the cast before they actually shoot a season, but the actual shooting time is typically 20 days for the Dutch version.
Yeah, it's 20 days, 10 shows ish.
Yeah, so if they only do 8 episodes, I'm gonna guess it could be as short as 16 days for their filming schedule.
Yeah, but the counterpoint to that is the fact that Anita went on day 2 last season and Tina went on day 3 this one.
Oh,
So they might be spreading them out a little bit more.
interesting.
And yeah, like I said, there were about 30 to 40 names rumoured for this season, going all the way back to season 1. As it is, they've completely retconned the first 5 seasons, because even with the older moles coming back, we don't see anyone from the first 5 seasons. They completely do not acknowledge Queen Angela's seasons for some reason. But we do have representatives from seasons 6, 7, 8, 11, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Weirdly, in terms of hosts, there's someone from both of Carol's seasons, 2 from Peter Yan's 4 seasons, 4 from Art's 7 seasons, and then someone from both of Rick's seasons so far.
Yeah, it's not quite like Survivor Winners at War, where they did get the people from the first couple of years. They're really big characters. But here, yeah, those first 5 years just get the shaft.
Yeah, and I was saying this to you earlier. I actually did a quick run through of the previous cast just to see, of the seasons that I've seen, which is 10, 11, and then 13 to the present day, who I would have brought back. Because there are some notable exceptions. I'm sure you would agree that there should have been someone back from Japan, given it's one of our favourite seasons.
Yeah, isn't that typically regarded as like the best Vidum season is Japan?
That and Georgia, yeah. Both of which you've seen. I mean, it's a bit of a shock that Aryan didn't come back, given he was one of the most popular Vidum candidates ever and one of the most suspected candidates ever until he went. If they'd extended it to people who made the final, I kind of would have liked to see Fritz, just because it's Fritz and Fritz is awesome.
Fritz Sissing is the mole.
God, we need to cover that season at some point. It's my favourite. It's quite a shock that South Africa didn't get any representation, given that that is one of the most popular seasons. Especially when Janine was rumoured, who was one of the first medevacs and actually got her spine compressed on the mole.
That might discourage her from wanting to play again. That might not be a production decision. That might be a candidate's decision.
Yeah, but there was a strong rumour that she was going to be one of the people coming back as a result of that, because she never got executed as a result of it. I would have loved to see literally anyone from Hong Kong, Philippines that isn't Tico come back, because anyone who's ever heard me talk about that season knows I really, really dislike Tico. He is one of my least favourite reality TV candidates ever. He's the absolute worst. He was a complete bully on his season, and he is going to be my punching bag this season, just to warn everyone now. Even though she was on a season with Ellie, I would have loved to see Cecile come back as well, because she was an icon. I would have preferred to see Diedrich or Emanuela from Oregon. Emanuela is the most used Vidum gif that I use. Her at the laser assignment, shooting a gun, which I'm sure I've sent you repeatedly. I'm quite surprised they didn't bring anyone other than Ron back from Georgia.
Because that's a great cast from top to bottom. It's very Ron has had the most random success with Vidum because he's done the interviews. He did the interviews for
The finale.
Yeah,
It
for the
was
finale.
the Columbia one. It was the Columbia one because I was stood in the audience, and I think I sent you a text just going, "What the fuck is Ron doing here?"
Yeah. So that was a huge surprise to see Ron not only get that finale gig for Columbia, but be the sole representative from the Georgia season.
Yeah, I'm not surprised he's back, given he's inexplicably popular with the Dutch public. But given how strong that cast was, you could have given me Molche. Come on.
Olche, Ruben, yeah, like any of those, and you can even extend it a bit further. to the remainder of the cast, but Ron is just such a random choice.
Talking of people who were obviously going to come back, but then stop some of our favourites coming back, not surprised Nikki's back, but you could have given us Sinan as well.
For the 50 people who listen to this podcast, we really needed Sinan.
I just really wanted another season of Sinan sabotages, I'm not going to lie.
So I don't know too much about how popular these celebrities are within the Netherlands, but
They're random. I'll be honest, they are random. Of these 10 people who actually did come back, 7 of them I've seen their seasons. 3 of them I like, I would say.
like they're not actually, so they didn't go for people who are like more popular for their other work in the Netherlands. Like this is just like this is they're equally random within the context of Netherlands entertainment as they are within Vidum entertainment.
Yeah, there's at least one person in this cast whose season I've seen, and I had to send friend of the podcast Bindles a message going, just remind me who this was. And it's actually quite bad because I liked him in this episode, but I just had no recollection of him ever existing. Because there's a lot of people in this cast who were very early boots. You have Ron, who was obviously the first boot. You have Nikki, who was the second boot. Tina, who was the second boot. Ellie, who was like fourth boot, I think. Tico went inexplicably far. We don't acknowledge his existence. Horace is a very early boot. I think Peggy and Nadja, I haven't seen their seasons, but I think they were both the final boot before the finale. Patrick definitely was. Yaron was fifth, I think. Yeah, so he was kind of mid-season. There's a lot of early people coming back. More than you'd expect.
Yeah. Well, you can't even say that Ron was on Vidum, Georgia, because he didn't even get to go to Georgia as a contestant. He was executed before he was even in Georgia.
He was, and he came back for one challenge, which actually means that in this season, he's managed to more than double his own challenge personal best.
Like, even the first execution, Ron's like, yes, I've made it through one execution.
For the first time ever, I've seen a green screen.
In fact, he's only played the mole with one other contestant. He's only played it with one person in a cast of 10. And then he gets to play with 9 other people. Like, that had to be overwhelming as hell for him.
I know that there are going to be some Dutch people who correct us on this entire segment, but as far as I am aware, Ron is inexplicably popular. Nikki is an obvious choice given that she's very, 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 very popular and potentially the most popular person who's ever been on. But a lot of these choices are very random.
Yeah, because we lurk around the Vidum forums a little bit. I mean, I don't really read Dutch, but these people aren't exactly names you see get brought up.
Now, these are not the sort of people that you see be invited to do anything else on Vidum, really.
Like, you and I have seen All-Star seasons that have dated back over 15 years now. The All-Star themes have been around for 15 years in reality TV. And there's always jokes every couple years about an All-Star season where it's like, man, this cast is really random. But I'm thinking through all the casts that Survivor has done with All-Star seasons, and there'll be some winners in there. There'll be some finalists in there on top of the random early boots or mid boots that no one really remembers. Big Brother All Stars is going on right now. There's a few people in there that have left people scratching their head, or in the case of Keisha, people just flat out don't remember. We had Big Brother Canada 5, but they did have some finalists in their fans versus favorites theme. But I think Vidum has to be given the award out of the 20 or so All-Star seasons that have happened worldwide for it having the most random collection of people and the most obscure people to make up an All-Star season, because they don't have any finalists, and they don't really have any iconic players within this group.
Honestly, I can make an argument for 3 of these people being here, and they're the 3 that I am most excited about seeing again, which is Ellie, Ron, and Nikki. Because Ron is inexplicably popular. I would have been surprised if they'd done a Vidum All-Star season without him, even though he was a first boot and played with one other person and literally got to go to the destination country for maybe an hour. Nikki is the most popular person probably ever to be on Vidum, and brings that fan base that we talked about when we covered Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie is an absolute icon. She is one of those people who we discussed a lot when we covered the Belgian Mole Argentina season, which you should listen back to because it is probably my favourite season we've ever done in terms of our coverage. She's completely and utterly unaware of how she comes across to people. And it's brilliant because, as you might have picked up from the context hint, she's a police sergeant, maybe an ex-police sergeant now, I can't actually remember, but she was, at the time she did Vidum, a police sergeant, who essentially tried to run every single operation like a police operation. And when there was walkie-talkies involved, she was the queen of ETA discipline and making sure only one person was talking at the same time.
That was her, okay.
Yeah, she is such a fun character, and I'm brilliantly pleased that they got her back because she's so unaware of how she comes across to people. But they're the only three who I can really make an argument to coming back.
Yeah, like Ron gets the like redemption spot, right? Like the guy who went home too really didn't really get to play. They have those on every All-Star season, but usually just one of those. And then you have Nikki, who, as I was asking before, she's like no one in the cast even remotely compares to her popularity, right? Right.
100% no. She's, well, between Colombia and now, she's not only increased her popularity a lot, she was meant to do the online stuff for Eurovision when that came to the Netherlands this year, but obviously that got cancelled. I think she is doing it again this year, or she's doing it again next year when it actually comes to the Netherlands, hopefully. She also had her big coming out video. She is very, very popular compared to the rest of the cast.
Yeah, what else was I gonna... Damn it, I had something in my head about Nikki that I... Oh yeah, with how much airtime she got this episode. It was clear that they know she's the most popular person because Nikki got a hell of a lot of airtime this episode.
Yeah, this is the sort of thing that I would have brought up in a separate preview episode, but Nikki got a lot of airtime just like she did in Colombia. In Colombia, she got so much airtime in her 3 episodes, to the point where they delayed her execution by an entire episode.
For a cliffhanger.
Yeah. They did a cliffhanger that they didn't need to do because they knew Nikki was going home, and it meant that they could convince her fans to keep tuning in. That is the power of Nikki. Having said that, if you remember back to our Colombia coverage, she did get a banner, I think, all 3 of her weeks. And that is continuing this week because she gave me such a giggle in the 3rd challenge, which Logan hasn't seen much of, which we'll get into in a bit. Tico, I have never heard anyone say anything positive about Tico. I don't think he's that popular in the Netherlands. He was a massive villain in his season, and, like I said, is one of my least favourite people ever to be on a reality TV season. I cannot make an argument for him being back.
What's funny is we just saw Vidum China, and I honestly could not remember much about Tina. Other than she rode in the taxi alone, and that she got really lost in the taxi. I think that's all I remember.
We will get into this, but Tina in China reminded me a lot of Tina in Renaissance, because Tina is very entertaining. I can kind of see why they brought her back, but she is terrible at Vias de Mol. She is genuinely awful at it, which is brilliant, but she did make me laugh a lot in this episode. So, we open over the hills of Tuscany. Old Fiats seem to be driving through the countryside, and the first challenge begins right now in a particularly Vidum style, much to my irritation over the past few years. They keep doing this, which is not actually telling us anything about the challenge. The first challenge is called Mirror Statue, and they've all written letters to the mole, and as they're introduced, we see quotes from said letters. And we are first introduced to homeless Tico, and I'm not entirely convinced he's not living in the Fiat that he's driving.
They got whatever 10 people they could for this season.
When I saw the cast photo of this season, regardless of my opinions of Tico, some of these people look exactly the same. Tina, obviously, given it's like 4 months between when she filmed it and when she filmed Renaissance. Some people have got a lot better. Some people, like Tico, look like they're living under a bridge.
There's no shortage of bridges in the Netherlands, so good luck finding him.
No, he genuinely looks like he lives under a bridge shouting at passers-by.
Don't you know who I am? I'm Tico.
Don't you know who I used to be? And he opens an envelope telling him to go forwards but look backwards. And Nadja is next to be introduced. She spots on the back of the signs that she's driving past that they also have messages on them. And the first one we see her pass says, "In the village square, you must come into view together through self-reflection. This will earn you €1,000 for the pots and a telephone number." Tina is third to be reintroduced, and she promises to grab the mole by its small brown neck. Tico's second message is that this winding road amongst the cypresses leads to the village of Montecchio. A few fellow candidates are waiting there. While you enjoy the view, you can already ask them to look for themselves. Ron is fourth up. He promises to treat them all like a gas leak, and he drives backwards, doing the exact opposite of what the note actually told him to do, and I do wonder why he went out almost immediately the last time. And he spots a sign saying, "Welcome in Val d'Orcia, a region of Tuscany consisting of a hilly landscape south of Siena and several villages. From now on, you have until 11 o'clock. And he gets another phone number. Euron is fifth. He's waiting in town. Nikki's sixth. She'll be the darling of the group. Again. They both have phones, as does Tina. Peggy is seventh up. Not that we see anything of her. And Ron spots the phone number on the sign, but actually reads it out wrong and gets a, "This phone is unavailable" message, giving us flashbacks to China. Ellie is the eighth to be introduced, and she says maybe she'll see who the mole is in their eyes. And the group in the town split up. They don't actually know who's going to be joining them. Patrick is ninth up. He says that they will make it difficult for the mole this time as returning players. And Horace is the last to be introduced and says the mole is both lucky and unlucky. Lucky to have a second chance, but unlucky that they're facing a group of experienced people who know what to look for.
Experienced?
Some of them are. There's a quick divide that you can make in this group between the people who lasted a while and the people who didn't.
And none of them even made the finale.
And in probably my favourite moment of the challenge, Nikki asks someone in the town what the message on the mirror means, and Tina has to point out to her that it's in Dutch and they won't know.
You know all those people in Italy who speak Dutch.
In a remote Tuscan village, you'll find a Dutch speaker easily.
Good luck even finding an English speaker from my experience, in a remote Italian village.
Yeah, I thought that. Of the two of us, you've probably got most experience of being in random Italian villages where nobody speaks English.
Your best bet is, I think the first English-speaking person I ran into when I was in Calabria was a woman from the Philippines who was a nun. She was the first English-speaking person I ran into, and she's not even Italian.
And Tina gets a call and asks if it's Rick. Horace says no, but they are the same height. And he starts reading the board, but they hang up on him before he finishes.
Experience group.
Well, maybe he's moling by hanging up the phone. You never know. This is the problem we're going to have with this season, because as I'm going to get into, we are going to be doing the pool again, and the pool is slightly delayed because we're basically going to give the three of us enough time to put a list together. The problem that we have is a lot of these people are really not suspicious. Because of the experience of knowing who these people are, on the whole, for me at least, a lot of these people don't seem suspicious to me, and it's going to give me really bad tunnel vision really quickly.
That's true. I guess this is really the first. Well, you had Corbin Burnson and Stephen Baldwin play back-to-back seasons in the American version, but overall, this is the first time where it's like a group of people we've all seen before. Or if you'd watched all the seasons, it's a group of people you've all seen before. So it's like, well, so for instance, you have, say, Nikki, who was in a season where they had a really, really low pot by the end of the game. So, Nikki's not going to do too well in these challenges. So if she's the mole, you're not really going to catch on to her being any better or any worse at challenges. It's like, oh, well, that's the Columbia cast. The Columbia cast sucked at challenges. So that's one way to deflect suspicion.
Yeah, and also the downside of half of this cast being early boots is the fact that we really don't know how they would have done if they'd got further, whether they would have been able to sabotage or not. Because if you look at someone like Ellie, whether she's a police officer or not at the moment, I'm not 100%. I did actually try and find this when she was part of the rumoured cast list. I'm not 100% whether she's still in the police force or not. I think she is, but I'm not. I can't guarantee it, basically. Would she accept a role as the mole? Would she accept a role as being a villain? That is a tough question, because knowing Ellie from her 5 episodes total or whatever it is now, I'm not sure she would.
That's interesting too. That production has to think about that too when picking their mole. They have to think about how they were perceived previously and how they can. I assume they want to have whoever gets picked as the mole needs to replicate their behavior from the first time.
Yeah, because going into Columbia, you could pretty much rule out Nikki, because Nikki was so popular and has such young fans that she didn't want to be the mole and show them that cheating is good. Which is why you tend to get a lot of middle-aged moles where they're just like, I don't really give a fuck how people perceive me anymore.
Yeah, your career is set in stone. a lot of the people who are a bit older don't rely on a social media following. It's kind of why Big Brother All Stars is doing so horribly right now, is because it's a bunch of younger people who who want to last as long as they can, so they get the most social media followers for whatever social media career they're planning after All Stars is over.
It really messes with your mind, this sort of stuff. And this is brilliant that they've brought an all-star cast together. Whether this all-star cast is a brilliant one is a whole other argument, but the past perception is probably going to come into this season a lot, I suspect.
Well, you know who doesn't have to worry about past perception is Ron. Like, does anyone know how Ron plays?
I don't think Ron knows how Ron plays.
He's just figuring it out as he goes.
Ron is essentially David in Big Brother All-Stars going, I went on day one last time. I have no fucking clue how to play this game. I'm just going to play it like a newbie and just go on with it. But the other thing you've got to bear in mind, I would say, is that production are probably going to pick someone who's popular to guarantee that they stay as long as possible. That's the other thing that plays into this sort of a season, is that to make this such a big kind of monumental season, they've got to kind of ensure that the mole will be a respected one and a popular one, I think.
So does that rule out Tico?
It does in my mind. He's an arsehole. He was actually on his best behaviour in this episode, so me calling him an arsehole this episode's probably not going to seem that kind.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I didn't really notice anything from him other than what, he needed a shave.
He was needlessly aggressive in Hong Kong and the Philippines. He was really, really rude at points.
Wasn't that season like over 10 years ago now?
Now it's 2014.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, 5, 6 years, he could change. He could could have seen himself on TV and realized, that didn't come across all that well.
So Patrick reveals that there is a rack for the mirrors near the church, and then promptly falls over the chain around the cenotaph when telling people. And they finally work out the point of the game, which is to find the 10 mirrors around the town, put them in the rack, and find your own quote on the mirror. And they split up to find more mirrors, and the duos they pick are Patrick and Tico, Ellie and Horace, Tina and Ron, Nikki and Yaron, and Peggy and Nadja, not that we see them. Ellie and Horace find 3 of the mirrors, whilst the other pairs are finding none, and they earn €1,000 by getting all the mirrors, but nobody knows their own quotes, so they earn €1,000 of possible 2,000 for the challenge, and Rick just decides on his own that Patrick is the treasurer.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't remember them debating at all as to who would be the treasurer. He just pops forward and takes the cash.
And something else to mention is that with Rick there, technically 11 seasons are represented in this cast, because nobody came back from Rick's cast. And going into the final game, where some of the old moles come back, you can actually bump that up by another 2. So really they did quite well getting representatives in this first episode from 13 of the 20 seasons so far.
That's respectable.
Yeah. We are not criticising this cast necessarily, it's just some of them are a little bit kind of random choices.
Her?
Yeah. Half of this cast you can go, huh? What? I don't remember them at all.
It would be great to talk to somebody from production to see what the thinking was into putting this cast together, especially staying far away from finalists, and then how they chose the people from there. Was it just that there was no one really available?
So we actually get the intro now, because unlike most seasons, they couldn't even release that on social media. And I love how half of the intro shots are car themed.
Yeah, just from the very first, you can tell what they filmed all of this on the first day.
Yeah, it's just like, just go drive that random Fiat to this camera and just pose for us, please.
It's like one of those car calendars, but instead of having like women in bikinis, it's just Dutch mole contestants posing in or around the car.
But it's only half of them, that's what makes it better.
Well, they had to vary the shots.
And Nikki asks why Patrick is the treasurer already, and she says she wants to do it. At which point Rick walks in, joins them at dinner, and asks who the treasurer is. And Patrick says him. Patrick is then asked to provide 2 candidates who want to earn money that evening, and he chooses Ellie and himself, and they are sent off over the terrace to another table. The other 8 are then asked for a list with common Italian first names. And they list them all quite quickly, however they list all males. And there is a question over whether they were asked for just male ones or female ones as well. And I have to say, I know you think the same thing on this challenge. This list was so mold.
Yes, this was a very, very mold challenge.
The mole was probably told two things about this challenge. Number one, that the treasurer actually had powerful ones, which doesn't always happen in Vidum seasons anymore. There is one season where it happened a lot, and the mole ended up being the treasurer, and it caused absolute carnage. But two was that the longer the list, the harder it's going to be. So they just need to keep rattling off these names, and boy, do they rattle off these names.
There's some obscure, like what I would do is just name off the characters I remember from The Godfather and just write those names down. Luca Brasi,
Don.
Vito, Sonny.
But I love how the names that we basically hear are either names of the Ninja Turtles or names from Nintendo games. And I'm fully aware,
Mario, Luigi.
nobody called me ignorant here. I'm fully aware of where the Ninja Turtle names came from. But seriously, the names we hear them ask about, on the whole, are Mario and Luigi and Michelangelo. And it just made me laugh so hard.
Because you got to think, like, ever since there's like the Mario games are celebrating their 35th year anniversary. So I think it's safe to say that 90% of the people in the town who are named Mario or Luigi have to be 36 years or older. Because believe it or not, people aren't as eager to name their kids Mario or Luigi after Nintendo became popular.
I would have loved it if the mole just got like Bowser and Peach and Toad added on there.
Yeah. Donkey Kong.
Yeah. Are you named Bowser? Is your name Link? I'd love it if they just walked into a shop and asked someone, "Are you called Link?" And he just went, ellipsis.
Yeah. No, my name is Error.
No, after an unfortunate incident I can't talk about, my name was changed to Thief.
Or go into another shop and there's a guy with an eye patch. It's like, oh, we should have written down King K. Rool. I feel so dumb.
But what impresses me the most about this is they got those name tags printed off super quick. It was actually quite impressive. They got them all typed in the mole font really, really fast. So, Ellie and Patrick will enjoy Tuscan cuisine at dinner and must set the table. They have to bet money up to €2,000 on guests with those names appearing at dinner. If they appear, they earn the money. If not, they lose the money from the pot. The other 8 have 45 minutes to run around the town and find people with the names that they listed to try and maximise the chance of them winning.
And this is a very bold aspect too, because suddenly all of these pairs are telling people to lie about their name while the cameras are on them.
Yeah, it's outside the box thinking, but the mole has never rewarded outside of the box thinking. It's not Taskmaster.
And it's also Dutch Mole. Dutch Mole's a bit more rigid too.
Yeah, there is absolutely nothing that allows you to bend the rules unless you're the mole. You see someone like Rob deleting high-value notes from those tablets in the Chinese market last season, but he was the mole. He's allowed to do those things. If you are a candidate, you are not allowed to do those things, and you will get caught, especially as it's on camera.
Cameras on, microphones on. I don't know what they were thinking, but that part was definitely like this. This is why I've ruled out Ellie or Patrick as the mole at this point, because writing the names and then making the locals lie about their names when they knew they weren't going to get away with it. It's like, man, this is why you need people who made it to the end of their respective mole seasons, because this challenge just gets completely ruined. And it just seemed way too easy for them all to get everyone on board with the whole male names thing. I mean, they did question why are there no female names, but there wasn't a strong enough voice that even said, "Oh yeah, we should get some female names on there." It was like, "Oh no, we need male names."
Let's try and actually find some women in this town.
Yeah, it's not like certain countries where women aren't allowed to be in public as much. This is Italy. That's you're going to see women around town, believe it or not. They're not at home cooking dinner and doing your laundry all day. Like this, they're allowed to be outside, believe it or not.
Even better is the fact they actually convinced some women to pretend they were called male names, because there were some women at those tables. And also, my other favourite thing about this challenge was Ron chasing down a car. Because Ron just proving his complete lack of experience in this season. Just chases down cars and just begs people to eat with him.
Yeah. If only he jumped on top of the car like an action movie and started banging on the roof. Come have dinner with me. You have no idea how badly I want to get through this first execution.
I'll do anything. Anything.
Don't make me cut the brakes.
You know what would have been even funnier is if when Ron rang someone, they just went, yeah, we're not in Tuscany, friend. We're actually in Rome.
Oh yeah, it's like he's like, damn it, this happened to me again. I go to Georgia and I'm stuck in the Ukraine.
Hot for dumber. So, unsurprisingly, the names who lied didn't count. €500 of names arrived, but 750 didn't, including all the liars, the dirty cheats of the world, giving them a huge total of minus 250 of a possible 2,000 for this challenge. And Ellie Lust is pissed. She is so angry at them.
Well, she's one of those who's had the most success amongst this group of 10, right? Within Vidum?
Yeah, she was fourth, fifth boot, I think.
Same with Patrick, too, right? He made it quite far?
Patrick was fourth place. Patrick was last boot before the finale.
Okay, so you have the two most successful people not really participate in this challenge, and 4 out of 5 of the other 8 haven't made it further than a couple rounds into their season. What do you think's going to happen?
See, it's a really weird one because the season that Ellie was on is a pretty bad season. It's one of the Dark Age seasons of Vidum. It's kind of plodding and had a terrible mole. That was the mole that got identified after week 2, by the way.
Which location?
Dominican Republic.
Ah.
Dominican Republic was the season that literally, I'd say 90% of people in the Netherlands knew who the mole was after week 2.
Just based on their sabotages?
No, based on a very, very blatant clue that was in episode 2. But Ellie is a delight in her 4 episodes. Ellie is brilliant as a character, and in fact, I believe has hosted something to do with the Dutch version of Hunted since, as an ex-copper. But Ellie is a delight. It's one of those weird things where you look at the casting of that season and go, there are some really brilliant people in that season, but holy shit, that season's terrible. It's the same with the Oregon season. The Oregon season I actually have a bit of a soft spot for because it's got quite a good cast, but the mole in that season is so good that you kind of ignore how bad the rest of the season is.
Right.
But that's for you to look at off air. Because I kind of want you to watch those seasons, but you're not allowed to hold it against me when those seasons are terrible and have just some bright spots. So, on day 2, they are all individually taken to a castle in Poppy, and Rick meets them and tells them they can make €2,500 today and earn valuable information. Upstairs, someone who knows how a mole works is waiting to talk to them. They will also walk past 5 boxes, but can't open any of them. The boxes contain an exemption, a yoker, €250, €250 again, and absolutely nothing. Interestingly, I was kind of intrigued at this after the first challenge when they got the €1,000 note. The €250 note features Ellie in Dominican Republic and the number 2803-100-48588. And yes, I did pause the screen to find out what that number was. It doesn't translate on a phone keyboard because I've checked, and if that is a clue at the end of the season, I'm going to be smug. And at the back of the room is someone with their back to them. As it turns out, 2 people of the cast will get each visitor, and each visitor is an old mole. Now, because Logan hasn't seen all the old Dutch seasons,
and neither have our listeners,
and neither have some of our listeners, I did tell Logan to skip pretty much this entire challenge. He knows who the first person was, and sadly, that's one of my favourite moles of these 5, but we are not going to talk about who the moles were as a result of that. What we are going to talk about is the rest of the challenge, because I'm going to just ignore all references to who the moles are and just talk about the rest of the challenge. Logan has no notes for this bit, so this is going to be solely me. Each mole gives an individual speech to the person, and I suspect those speeches are probably going to end up being a clue, given it's calling back to an old clue. But then they give a speech saying the mole's sole purpose is to keep the pot as low as possible and sabotage you as a candidate behind your back. And they set out 2 rules. After they finish speaking, each candidate can go back the way they came and can only move forward, not backwards, and take 1 thing out of a box. Now, this is Vias de Mol. This is a very Belgian-style challenge, and this is played horribly by pretty much everyone in this cast. Of the cast of 10, 7 of them get nothing.
And there was only 1 box that had nothing.
Well, by the time they turned around, there was 2, because whilst the mole was talking to each candidate, someone snuck into the room and removed the exemption from the final box.
Pardon me, 2 of the 5, 40% chance you get nothing.
Yeah, so each person, even though they've been on the mole before, and a lot of them have played the Path of Temptation or a variation on it, especially as it keeps recurring in the later seasons, they all know better than to trust what they can see. They all, ironically, have tunnel vision, with the exception of Nikki and Ron, who both get a yoker, and Horace, who picks up €250, but only because he picks a box at random.
I have a prediction.
What is your prediction?
The pot will not be very high by the end of this season.
No, I'm not surprised, but these people have not learnt from their mistakes.
And what doesn't help them is that there's only 8 episodes this season, as opposed to the usual, 10 rounds of gameplay?
Yeah, so there are no non-eliminations, there can be, so obviously not everyone's going to get an exemption, and more importantly, mathematically, it doesn't work if there is a reunion episode, which means either there's no reunion, and they filmed a reveal on location and there isn't going to be a reunion, which could still happen if the Netherlands is locked down, or, alternatively, there is a double boost at some point. There literally cannot be a non-elimination unless there's going to be a guaranteed double boot, because there isn't a final 4. In the mole book, it only has space for winner, loser, mole in the final page.
But hey, at least they got something from this challenge. At least they got €250.
Yeah, but the best thing is, Horace doesn't even declare it. It's still technically not in the pot by the end of this episode. Rick mentions it at the execution that someone took money, but the money hasn't been added to the pot yet.
Oh, so it could just be money that he pockets for himself.
Yeah, it would be worthless if he just pockets it for himself, but in theory, he can just hold on to that mole money, because he doesn't have to tell anyone he's got it.
Oh, he's not gonna put it in the pot then. That's, especially if no one else got money out of it, he's just gonna be like, well, these losers didn't do anything for me. So yeah, he's gonna have a fun night out once he gets back to Amsterdam.
Yeah, for the purposes of our reporting, I am going to include it in the totals. But officially, the pot ends the episode at €750 of a possible 5,000. In reality, it actually ends it at 1,000 out of 5,000.
Well, for half of these contestants, that's pretty much what the average pot was when they were eliminated to begin with.
In fact, when Ron was eliminated, I think it was minus 3,000, something like that.
Yeah, actually, at the execution, he said, wait, 750 positive or 750 negative euros?
And something interesting that did actually come out of the episode is that they think that the mole was the one who snuck in and stole the exemption, which, if it was, is a very interesting idea, because, being honest, there's a signature sent to the mole, potentially. If it is a female mole, for example, there's a chance she could be wearing perfume.
And plus, you have to do that to 9 people. You gotta on the first episode.
They never do a Meet the Mole challenge where the mole actually gets within, I think 6 feet is the record with the Georgia one, and that was when nobody was expecting it. So they never do a challenge where the mole gets that close.
And because the mole that season was a brilliant mole.
Yeah, a very, very sneaky mole. So I'd be surprised if it was the mole. Either that, or they were told that they had to keep speaking to the old mole and keep their attention on the old mole. But if they were, that makes the argument even worse that, oh, I didn't look round. Or, oh, I didn't expect the exemption to have disappeared. If you know you've got to keep looking forward, something's happening behind you.
And we get to our quiz, and Ron is the only one out of the 2 who uses a yoker.
Well, let's do the proper intro. On day 3, it's time for the test. 20 questions on the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home, except for the mole, who has gone home before, but cannot go home this time. I was very proud of rewriting that. I'm going to say it in this episode. So Horace suspects Tina and Nadja, but Tunnel-Vision is dangerous. Yaron suspects Nikki, his roommate, because they had to look for mirrors, and she's a beauty vlogger. Nadja says that if Ron is the mole, it would be amazing, but he keeps claiming he just doesn't want to go home. Ron wants to spread on 5 people: Tico, Peggy, Tina, Horace, and Nikki. Nikki suspects Tico because he's all over the place. That's called being without fixed abode, Nikki. Of course he's all over the place. Tico suspects Ellie inexplicably. Tina's looking at who sabotages and who is suspicious. Peggy has a top 3, which is Horace, Tina, and Ellie. Ellie says the first test is the one you should spread on. She's going for 4 people. Patrick says that Ellie is a liar. As he said, I'm living my dream, but she was the one who claimed the mirror with it on. And Horace, Nikki, and Ron, for the first time ever, all get green screens before history repeats itself for Tina, and she gets a red screen again. And she's in disbelief.
I think her exact words were, "I'm not cut out for Vidum."
Yeah. Essentially, it's, if you're looking for who is the loser, call me back, but otherwise I think I'm done with this game.
V is the loser. Vidal.
Say what you want about Tina, but she is very funny and very self-deprecating.
You kind of have to be when you go home even earlier than you did the first time, and the first time you were gone second. Because the mindset she probably had as well. I can't do worse than I did the first time unless I'm really unlucky. And then she got really unlucky.
Yeah, and Ron's going to be there, so he can go home first again anyway.
That Joker probably saved his ass.
So next week, they transport buckets. Tico refuses a search. There is a laser object, and unlike last season, it actually seems to be a real one. And a black exemption is offered. Boo.
Oh, we didn't talk about how I called who got executed.
Yes, you did. I skip over positive things about you, Saunders. You should know that by now.
Yeah, right before the execution, I messaged you saying, well, I think Tina's going to go based on the edit. And she's like, she's had some airtime, but not a huge amount to set herself up as a big character for the next several episodes. And then she goes home first.
I'm proud of you, son.
And Ron's blood pressure went drastically down after surviving that first execution. Granted, I guess he did spread between 5 people and had a Joker. That's a guy who's playing to be not last on a 10-person quiz. He's probably thinking, other players are going to split between 2 or 3. If they're all wrong on those 2 or 3 suspects, they're going to have a score of maybe 1 out of 20, 2 out of 20, 3 out of 20. He's probably thinking, if I split it between 5 people and use my Joker, I'm not going to get much higher than 4, maybe 5 out of 20, but at least I know that I'll be safe from the first round.
Yeah, it's enough.
It's enough, yeah. He pretty much guaranteed himself to not be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth on that quiz. He's like, if I use this strategy, I'm guaranteed to be 7th or 8th out of the 9 people who's taking the quiz.
Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, he survived once.
I cannot fault his logic on that. Whether he survives any longer is going to be another argument, but yeah.
Just imagine, though, if he was executed first, that would be even more brutal than for Tina. Like, Tina, it's like, okay, you made it to second. I mean, and this time there's returning players, so it's going to be a bit tougher to survive. Everyone knew to spread on the first quiz. Even Tina said that she spread, and she just got unlucky and spread on the wrong people. But if Ron went first, then it's like, okay, it is confirmed. You are the worst player in V is the Mole history.
I think I said this to you when you were watching the episode. I was hoping and praying it'd be Ron just for the comedy value. I thought it would be so funny if Ron ended up going home twice first, because I'm an absolute sadist.
Especially when V is the Mole doesn't do returning player seasons too often. It's been 20 years. This is the 21st season, and they're finally bringing people back. And it's like, well, you're not going to have a shot at having a first boot to be the first boot 2 seasons in a row. Well, I guess we get as close to it as we can with Tina going, but we don't get that ultimate record of, hey, here's our Francesca. Ron is our Francesca for Vidum.
So, bit of housekeeping. Our pool is returning, but the teams will be officially confirmed in next week's recap. You can, again, give us your first suspicions with the link that I've already tweeted in our social media, and we'll tweet again. And also in the description of this episode, the form will be open until the next episode airs on Saturday evening, and I will be hopefully remembering to check back to see who actually suspects the correct mole. And it is the same form that we're going to use to build our teams. The logic behind us not confirming the teams till next week is basically to give me, Logan, and Michelle a little time to think about who our lists are going to be, do the ordering, and then I can build the teams in preparation for next week's episode. It does mean that someone is going to claim the boots for next week, and it's going to be delightfully fun already. And I kind of like this way of doing it, I'll be honest. It just spreads out the time limit a little bit for us to submit our respective lists.
Yes.
Talking of suspicions, though, Mr. Saunders, who are your top 3?
Not much to go on with the first episode. I mean, the biggest thing is who I've ruled out who it isn't. Ellie and Patrick, it's going to be a long time before I reconsider them as a mole suspect. So my top 3 are Yaron, Naja, and Nikki.
See, the weird thing is we didn't see basically anything of Peggy and Nadja this week, especially Peggy.
Peggy, I was about to actually. Did we? Is this the first time we've mentioned her?
Well, I mentioned that her and Nadja split up into a pair in the first challenge, but we've genuinely seen nothing of her this episode, which is really weird given that she is from the earliest season that they've brought anyone back. She's the most old school of these players, and she went far last time. I think her, Nadja, Patrick, Tico, I think all four of them got to the last boot before the finale. And then Yaron was like 6th or 7th, as was Horace. Ellie was like 7th. Nikki was obviously 8th. Tina was 9th. Ron was last. I think I've covered everyone there. But yeah, Peggy, Nadja, Patrick, and Tico are the ones in theory that should have the most experience because they lasted pretty much their entire seasons.
It's very interesting because I even had that in my notes, or I was going to mention it earlier. Like, I can't recall a single scene where Peggy was. Did she even really get any confessionals the whole round?
She gets like 1 or 2, but they've never under-edited a contestant like this, I would say.
In a premiere, that is.
No, I would say normally we get a pretty good impression of pretty much what everyone in the cast is heads are at in the premiere. Whereas Peggy, we really don't. She gets a mention-ish at the start of the episode, although there really aren't that many. Or there isn't much content really from the first challenge about who these people are, which surprised me a little bit. She gets a confessional at the execution, as does everyone, and that's it.
And then you just have Horace saying, trust no one, like 20 times.
Well, they have to give a shout out to everyone's favourite Vidden podcast that isn't us.
Yeah.
So my top 3 is really difficult because if you've heard any of our previous mole seasons, we try and, for the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks, pick 3 suspects. But I'm really tunnel visied on one person already.
And you're the worst for tunnel visi.
I know, and I said this on Twitter earlier when I'd finished watching the episode. I can't help myself. But my pre-season suspicion of who it was going to be hasn't been dissuaded, which is the worst.
And who was that?
Nikki.
Okay, so Nikki's no longer on my suspect list.
May I remind you, Mr. Saunders, who drafted the mole last season?
Yeah, but who's your overall track record, Michael?
Whether that was entirely by default is a whole nother story, but I did draft Rob last season, and I'm going to be mindful of that, and,
Your 7th or 8th pick.
Yeah, 9th, but he was literally the last person drafted. Yeah, I'm kind of tunnel visied on Nikki at the moment. Her, Ron, and Tina were basically the 3 people who everyone knew was going to be on this cast, and the 3 people who pretty much are on every rumoured cast list for this season. Nikki especially, because there is a picture on her Instagram of her in the hills near Montecchio with Rick.
She's not a subtle mole if she is one.
No. I feel like they're going to pick a big, bombastic mole this season. Someone who really is ballsy with their sabotages.
Like Muriel.
Yeah. I feel like they're going to pick a mole who is going to be a popular mole. And nobody coming into this season is as popular as Nikki is. So Nikki was always going to kind of be up there for me, but she really took charge of that name game, the second challenge. She really, really, really took charge of it. And it felt like the entire world was revolving around Nikki in that challenge. And I know I've got tunnel visi, and I know I'm going to be horrendously wrong when she gets executed.
Next week.
But I just can't shake the feeling that it is Nikki right now. And the worst thing for you and Michelle is I get first draft, so I'm probably going to get Nikki.
All right, on that note.
Yeah. So, I don't think I've got anything else to say. I don't think you have either.
Nope.
So, thank you for listening to our Vies to Mole Renaissance premiere recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for the newest mole in Italy. Don't forget you can contact us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us at contact@rtvwarriors.com. Logan is on Twitter, as always, at Logsquacky, and I'm MJ Harmstone. See you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.